happen if you paired up this creature with this creature. Both species are aliens from outer space. Both are highly aggressive. Both are horde species, whose numbers had managed to overrun the planet. Both have queens that are very aggressive and way more intelligent than her subjects. Both of the queens are responsible for giving all the orders to the horde, or at least their main mission. Both number in the millions, and both species just keep coming until there's no return, until you're completely overwhelmed by their numbers. They're both predatory species, they understand what it means to be tactical, they're fiercely intelligent, and one thing's for sure, they understand or quickly adapt to the prey which they're hunting. This creature is called a white spike. White spikes are a horde predatory alien species that are believed to have been bioengineered to cleanse all living things from planet Earth. They have 6 limbs, 4 for standing and running, and arm-like appendages, like highly developed palps for grasping, cleaning, grabbing, and feeling for things, as well as protecting their faces from all manner of projectiles that are complete with powerful jaws and very sharp knife-like teeth. To complete their attack status, they each have a pair of tentacles that not only can aid them in climbing and melee attacks, but they can also shoot out what seems to be calcified, high-caliber spikes from out of them. Can you say OP? Oh yeah, and their top side is completely armored, so yeah, bullets won't work. Not on that side. They're only vulnerable from their underside, and they are very good at dodging close quarters. They also know how to retreat and come out from a different angle, and they love playing psych-out games. They have regular eyes that function diurnally as well as nocturnally, which means these creatures can see in very dark conditions and light conditions. They can swim and swim fast. They can glide. They can jump very high. They can climb upside down and backwards. Not to mention a very smooth and vertical surfaces. Anywhere is accessible to these creatures. Their jaws are powerful enough to bite through steel and cast iron, and they can communicate with each other, so they function like a well-oiled machine. Not to mention their method of communicating are an array of clicks, chitters, chatters, different noises, and even using their tentacles to beat on certain surfaces so that they make noise over very long distances, as you can see in this clip. They have a super high metabolism, so they're always eating. They seem to only rest every 7 days, and it's not even rest. It's more like a day off, because they're still totally up and awake and running around ready to feast at a moment's notice. They mostly just kill and then save some of their food for later by hanging up the corpses somewhere high, possibly as a scare tactic and also to keep meat out of the reach of other predators. Yeah, like any other predators can exist with these things around. And for that, the white spikes are formidable aliens, seemingly overpowered creature who are so intelligent that they can outsmart humans, even though that's not really saying a lot in this day and age. But how would these creatures go up against other creatures that are also very intelligent and aggressive? Creatures like the Tao Tie. The Tao Tie are also a very destructive species that are also very intelligent. They too run fast, are highly aggressive, have very powerful jaws, and range in the millions. They too have the ability to climb vertical surfaces, although they seem to have a much harder time at doing it than the white spikes. These creatures are intelligent, and although they're not seen communicating with each other, they will aid each other by taking weapons from out of each other's bodies. They're smart enough to know to take the weapon out of themselves, and if their comrade needs help, they will assist them. They are smart and understand war tactics, and if something doesn't work, they retreat and try a different way. These creatures also came from outer space. Like the white spikes, they have green blood. But even though they don't have armor like the white spikes, the one thing that they do have over the white spikes is that they seem to be a bit immune to fire. They still feel pain, but their skins are so thick that they can run while on fire for a while. And as far as we've seen, fire doesn't seem to kill them. So it's believed that they get burned for a little bit, and then eventually the fire goes out and they just continue attacking. The Tao Tie have a very high pain tolerance. They can communicate over long distances, and they too have a queen that is very intelligent. She is responsible for ordering the horde. She communicates with her horde by erecting her head appendages and making vibrations with the membrane that connects the two. She's much larger than her soldiers, and she's always accompanied by her bodyguards, creatures that are even larger than her and built like gorillas. The queen is always in the center, and when there's an attack, they open up their frills, these bodyguards, to protect the queen. Nothing can get past them. No fire, no bombs, no creature, nothing. Even though the queen has many soldiers, when she's out here fighting with them, she's completely vulnerable, even though she has her bodyguards with her. Because if anything happens to the queen, the army is useless. Literally, their existence depends on her survival completely. The army kills and scourges everything in their path, and then they bring food to the queen. She too has a high metabolism, and she'll come out to feed and destroy every 60 years. On Earth, that is. Who knows what it was like on her planet? It's possible that 60 years on Earth might have been the equivalent of 4 hours on her planet. All her little cucumber-shaped soldiers will stuff their heads in her mouth and vomit all the food they've eaten into the queen. They feed on anything they can get their mouths on, and while they'll kill most of the threat, which are humans, they will feast on a lot of them in order to feed the queen. And while she's being fed, no one attacks. Everyone protects, as she's very vulnerable. As I've said before in a previous video, I don't know why the guards would not hold their frills up while she's feeding, but the guards are so good at reacting to anything heading close to the queen that even without thinking, the guards will naturally open up their frills to protect their queen if they see anything approaching too close. Even though they're kind of cutting it close there, the queen has seemingly high-level human intelligence. She can deduce that if something blew up, someone threw something at her and it came from someplace above. In that way, this queen and the white spike queen are very similar. The Tao Tie are very powerful creatures, and their only weakness seems to be their eyes, which for the soldiers are on their shoulders. The tops of their head are very heavily armored, so it's not easy to chop off their heads, at least not from the top. And unless they're completely sliced in half with some knife-like apparatuses, or they are shot completely in the eyes, these things just don't go down. They refuse. However, looking at some scenes in the Great Wall movie, after a while and sustaining enough injury, some of the Tao Tie do seem to fall and get exhausted. These Tao Tie that were milling around seem to be very out of it, maybe from getting concussions, from falling from a great height, or just simply from getting tired. We don't see the white spikes acting this way, so we can deduce that the Tao Tie have great endurance, but just simply not as much as the white spikes under duress, or if they've been fighting for a while. When this happens, the queen knows well enough to retreat, to bring her army back. She knows when they're getting too tired, she knows when her army is losing, and they definitely do feel pain or injury because we've seen a few of them limping that didn't seem to have any serious injuries. However, the white spikes will keep coming even while they're injured. Literally with their last dying breath, they will continue running after their prey. It's almost as though they don't feel pain or have been engineered not to. In the Edge of Tomorrow movie, the queen learned how to fake being asleep. Since she knows they drugged her every few hours or every hour, she stayed asleep, tried to listen to their conversation. It's unknown whether or not she actually understands humans, but she probably understands the connotation of what they're doing. And she knows how to fake being in a state of sleep so that her attackers won't attack anymore. And then, when they least expect it, she bides her time and then lets out a roar to let her others know where she is. Unlike the Tao Tie, there is not only one queen, there are actually several. It's just that they're not as numerous as the males. I guess it's safe to say that to every million males, there are about 10 females, or maybe even lower. It's hard to figure, but after seeing hundreds of thousands of males coming to this one female's aid, I think each queen has her own army. And since these creatures are always breeding, it's safe to assume that new queens are being made all the time. Also, with the white spikes, if their queen dies, they don't just cease to exist. Like the Tao Tie, these creatures can think for themselves. They don't necessarily need their queen with them. The queen does give the general mission order, but if the queen is not around, the white spikes act individually, and they are very intelligent, although the queen is much more intelligent. We have seen that her soldiers, or the male versions, like the queen, do have the capability for exacting vengeance. The Tao Tie are much more primitive than that. While the queen seems to be very vengeful, the soldier Tao Tie, although very tactical, seem a bit too primitive for vengeance. These creatures know how to be sneaky and careful, and since they can't function without their queen, it's fair to assess that these creatures are probably extensions of the queen. But they can make decisions individually while she's not there, like sneaking onto their prey if they know their prey is unsuspecting. Aside from being able to get tired, having a high pain tolerance, but not as high as the white spikes, the Tao Tie have one other weakness. Magnets. You see, magnets make the Tao Tie sleepy, or just like, they just make them like there, just to... They just stop. They're alive. They're just not themselves anymore.
Please help me.
So what would happen if we put the Tao Tie up against the white spikes? Well, first let's do a single up against single. One Tao Tie up against one white spike. As you can see from looking at each of the creatures, one clearly has bigger jaws than the other. The Tao Tie's jaws are formidable and very powerful. But having bigger jaws doesn't always mean that the jaws are more powerful. For example, a tiger is a massive animal, much bigger than a wolf, wouldn't you say? The bite force of a tiger is 1,050 psi, or pounds per square inch. They are said to bite almost twice as hard as lions do. Don't know why they have a picture of a freaking jaguar over there that's not a tiger. But keep in mind that the tiger is a huge animal, one of the biggest land predators, and it has a bite as powerful as 1,050 psi. However, a wolf that is smaller than a tiger has a bite force of 1,500 pounds of pressure. So 1,050 psi versus 1,500 psi. The smaller animal has the larger bite force. Isn't that something? So yes, bigger doesn't always mean more powerful. The Tao Tie do have massive jaws that can cover a larger surface area, that can also grab things more easily. But their jaws seem to be their only weapon aside from their claws. They need their jaws to be large for the kind of creature they are and for the kind of mission they're trying to accomplish, which is to kill and then eat and then feed the queen as much as possible. They can use their hefty jaws for killing as quickly as possible and also for devouring so they can bring back as much food as possible to their queen. That is not really the job of the white spikes. After all, these guys were able to bite straight through this freaking chains. And yet the Tao Tie couldn't, even though they tried several times to. And I don't know, but looking at these chains, they look about as thick or even thicker than the ones we see in the movie with the white spikes. So I deduced that if these creatures were trying to bite the chains, and they were even helping each other to try and bite the chains off to the point where they couldn't and they had to resort to just pulling the whole thing out, while the white spikes were able to do that in very short fashion with what looked to be a weaker chain, and each of them at their point where they bit, they were able to completely sever the chain, tells me that the jaws of the white spikes are much more powerful than that of the Tao Tie, which means that in a fight, if it came down to the bite, the white spikes would win. Not to mention, the white spikes have way more armor on their bodies. Sure, if the queen white spike was trying to go up against the bodyguards of the queen Tao Tie, she probably would have some issues. But up against the horde, the Tao Tie don't seem to be any match for these creatures. They're just too agile and far more intelligent than the Tao Tie. The Tao Tie are smart, but only as an extension of the queen. If for some reason they can't communicate with her, they go brain dead. Instead, we have a whole bunch of white spikes individually thinking for themselves and directly communicating with each other in order to complete their mission. They are always communicating with each other at all times. They don't need their queen to tell them what to do every moment. When she needs help, she will call them. But in other circumstances, the white spikes basically know exactly what they're supposed to do, and they think individually. And you can even see the different personalities in each of them as we're watching the movie. The Tao Tie are basically just all one and the same. A legitimate hive mind. They're probably more naturally occurring creatures. And so it's not even fair with this matchup, because it seems as though the white spikes were directly engineered to take down humans and to kill. They are the perfect soldiers. They also don't feel pain and can go a lot longer without being tired. If their queen dies, the army still stands. Not only do they have many other queens, but they don't stop existing or are unable to function as soon as their queen is dead. Another reason why the white spikes would win against the Tao Tie, especially in a single match, is for the simple fact that these creatures have tentacles that can shoot out these weird spike things. They would realize the weakness of the Tao Tie monsters very easily, and since they're in constant communication with each other, they would tell the others to aim for the eyes the same way the humans do, and it would be completely easy to stay at a distance to climb up on areas that the Tao Tie can't reach, since the Tao Tie are not as good climbers as these guys are, and they would just literally accurately aim for the eyes of the Tao Tie and pick them off. Also, the white spikes are always replenishing. The higher population of the white spikes would just keep on rising exponentially, because unlike the Tao Tie, the white spikes have many queens that are breeding, and they breed a lot faster than the Tao Tie. In the movie, The Great Wall, it was said that after the queen does her business, or from what we've observed, if her army is depleting too fast or taking too much damage, she will call them away and retreat. This is to regroup and to try another tactic, which they did, which is to dig a tunnel under the city to get past these humans. But after all this, she goes away for 60 years to feed and to breed.
From that day on, the Tao Tie rise every 60 years and take food to their queen. She depends on her soldiers to feed her. Only with the food they provide is she able to multiply.
So there you have it. The queen can only breed if she keeps on getting food. And she needs her soldiers to do that for her because she can't leave her little circle of her prison guards. The white spikes aren't held by those kinds of limitations. We don't even have to throw the magnet in there because I honestly believe that in this situation, the white spikes would overthrow the Tao Tie so easily they wouldn't even leave the region. They would realize that the queen is important and that the queen is giving orders and they would pick the queen off. Now granted, the bodyguards do a good job of protecting the Queen Tao Tie, but with the population soaring well above that of the Tao Tie, the white spikes would be able to quickly overthrow them and they would all aim for the queen. The Queen Tao Tie's guards would put up a very good fight, but as you can see here, there is a whole opening right in the middle where the queen is. And we have seen them form a tighter circle around the queen. However, with the sheer numbers of the white spikes, the queen would not be able to stay safe for very long. And all they would need to do is pick her off or get in there and kill her, which they would do quite easily, and the whole army is defeated. This is not a fair fight. Also, like I said, the Tao Tie wouldn't be able to replete because this army that the Queen Tao Tie has with her can only be repleted after she goes back to rest and to breed and multiply, which she can't do when she's out in the field. It also makes no sense for her to actually be out here fighting with them. And we know that the white spike queen doesn't do that unless she's disturbed. That's the only reason she was out here in Edge of Tomorrow. She has her lair and she generally stays in there, but she can more than handle herself in battle, which the Tao Tie queen doesn't seem to be able to do. The Tao Tie queen is not a fighter, and the reason why she's out there with her army and needs to be protected is because her army literally cannot function without her. As soon as she dies and she knows her goose is cooked, despite her intelligence and trying her best, she would die very quickly and the rest of her army would just cease to function, like brainless robots. They would just be lambs to the slaughter, and the white spikes would have food for a very long time. That's the end of it. Now, surely the Tao Tie would try to find some way around the white spikes, but the white spikes are simply just too outmatched intelligence-wise for the Tao Tie. The population is higher. They have too many weapons and are OP when it comes to the amount of fight tactics that they can employ. They're better climbers, they can glide, they're much smarter, more resilient, and don't have a weakness right out in the open like their freaking eye that can be shot at any moment to down them. The Tao Tie are the perfect killing machines against the humans, and that's only because these humans didn't have guns and more bombs. If this was set in a more modern era, those Tao Tie would have been killed a long time ago. So that's it for the mashup. The white spikes definitely win. Thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You ask, we answer.